Excellent. So today I am extremely excited to be here with Sarah Van Osdal, our Community Health Director, and Jonathan Giuffrida, my co-founder and Metopio's Chief Technology Officer. What you need to know about these two wonderful humans is that both Sarah and Jonathan are community assessment experts, having completed nearly 100 of them between the two of them. And that includes the Community Health Improvement Plan. Sarah leads our community health portfolio, partnering with public health departments and health systems across the country to use data to understand their community, complete their assessment and CHIP, and plan meaningful actions. Jonathan has built and leads our technology and data teams. Together, they have taken the assessment process apart and put it back together again using MAP 2.0 to think about how to approach this work where community voice is at the center, and that's where we spend our time and effort. So that's going to be where we spend our time today. I have an interactive webinar for you. I have a couple questions as we go along. I'm going to share my screen. After that long pregnant pause. And give you an overview of our webinar today. So we're going to refresh. If you didn't join us for our MAP 2.0 Community Health Assessment webinar, we're going to touch on MAP 2.0 guidance for the CHIP. Oh, it's playing by itself. And how we're going to leverage AI to develop our CHIP. Talk about logic models and measurement for those of you who had checked those boxes, and take Q&A. So with that, I'm going to get started by turning the webinar over to Sarah.
So thanks, Angie. Yeah, so for this slide right here, I'm just going to give a brief overview of what we talked about on our last webinar and kind of center everyone around the current, phase 3 or CHIP process of MAP 2.0. So our prior webinar focused on primarily the community health assessment, or CHA, specifically the first 2 phases of the MAP 2.0 process, which you can see on the graphic on the right on the slide. Phase 1 really is building the community health improvement foundation. So planning for your assessment, gathering information on current and potential partners, developing your steering committees, reviewing previous community health assessments if you've completed them in the past as well. And then phase 2 is your community health assessment, or telling the community story. So engaging members of the community and partners in development of the community health assessment, identifying what health themes are occurring, and also what are the root causes of those. So for today, we'll be talking about phase 3, which is continuously improving the community. This includes really the action plan that you develop, measurement and evaluation, or basically the CHIP process, Community Health Improvement Plan. So more detailed steps are shown in the slide following the note on complete CHA. So just kind of start off the process, you'll be prioritizing the issues. So after completing your community health assessment, you'll probably have about 10 or so, kind of key themes or health needs that arise that you're seeing data for and community input for. The MAP 2.0 process recommends you select about 3 to 5 of those issues to address in your CHIP. Really, this will just ensure that you're meeting and able to achieve your goals and meeting the most critical needs of the community. The next step is to conduct a power analysis. So the really, kind of guiding question around this is, who has power over the issue to kind of impact and make change? Who is aligned with what you want to achieve, who might not be aligned. So that can really guide who you partner with during your CHIP. From the power analysis, you can create your priority work groups. So, groups of people that will be addressing those key issues, and then also creating partner profiles. So, what are the vision, mission, values of your community partners, and what type of resources will they provide? So this is a really good step to incorporate any information from your community partner assessment that you completed during your full health assessment. Then the next step would be to develop shared goals and measures. really just kind of determining what are the desired outcomes of addressing these issues that you've identified. Collaboration is really key in this part. MAP 2.0 has an emphasis on collaboration. So as much as possible, if you can align with what other organizations' goals are, you can really have the most impact possible. From there, you'll be able to select your specific CHIP strategies. So basically what activities, programs, partnerships will achieve what your desired goals and outcomes are. The next step is the CQI action planning cycles. So CQI is continuous quality improvement. So for each of your kind of key issues and activities, you should be, developing logic models, targets, goals, and plans for how you're going to track your impact. And then the next step is to monitor and evaluate. So depending on your organization, your CHIP will be 3 to 5 years. So you'll have plenty of time to kind of touch base, see how you're doing, and then adjust any of your activities as needed during that time cycle, just to ensure that you're really having the most impact possible. So that's a really high level overview of that third phase. We've taken these steps and this knowledge from the MAP 2.0 process to create a solution around, creating your CHIP tool to help you, kind of not only meet those requirements quicker, but really get to action sooner. So in the work at Metopio, we want to be sure that we're centering community voices, so we make sure that the CHIP tool can really be a reflection of community priorities and how your organization will address them. So like we talked about in our last webinar, our goal will be to, maximize your time getting you to the action part of your process sooner. So as I work with, public health and healthcare clients, every day leveraging Metopio, in the MAP 2.0 process, we're able to get more granular data and incorporate more qualitative data so we can get to the root cause of poor health outcomes. So for the CHIP module, we're able to, kind of do 3 things. So we can, select evidence-based programs, or you have the flexibility to design your own programs if you choose to do so. Everything is using the logic model kind of as the second thing that you're able to do. So all of the inputs, activities, all the way to the outcomes that you want to achieve will be incorporated into those activities. And then the last thing you're able to do is measure impact over time using the tool itself. So I'm really excited to turn the presentation over to Jonathan. He'll show you what we're doing right now. And I think there'll be some opportunities for questions and comments as well.
Thanks, Sarah. So at Metopio, our focus is on building easy to use tools. And we mean really easy to use. We're trying to help you go further, faster, and be able to use more of your expertise in your community on the parts of the CHNA and CHA process that require the most expertise. Our team comes from community health. Like Angie said, Sarah and I have done so many CHIPs, so many CHNAs and CHAs before even coming to Metopio. We're building the tools that we wish we had had at that job, that we could have used to automate more of that process, to be able to do this faster and especially better, because there's always limited resources and limited time available. We like to think of ourselves as a community with our users, like we're sharing our expertise and our resources, building tools that solve actual problems, and then sharing those solutions more widely to try to move this entire space forward. So everything that we do is really trying to be pragmatic. This isn't about shiny tools. It's about helping you get your work done faster so you have more time for the deeper analysis and program management that you want to do. Here is where generative AI in the past year or two has been really helpful in providing ways to go further faster by automating more of the tedious tasks and providing more of kind of a jump start to the CHA and CHIP process so that you can get further along in that process a lot quicker, and be able to spend more time on the more exciting parts of the MAP 2.0 process. So we're going to, I'm going to be showing you what some of those tools look like here. Before I do, we do have a poll that we want to ask you sort of how you currently are thinking about AI in this work.
So just take a quick second to vote and let us know how you're thinking about AI in your work and how comfortable you are. It will help us as we talk through the rest of the program, and definitely want to encourage your questions as Jonathan continues his presentation. So give you one more quick moment to vote, and I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So Jonathan, it looks like folks are kind of in the middle of the road, right? Not
Great.
really comfortable or uncomfortable. And then we have people on both sides with a pretty sizable unsure. So I would love to see how, as we talk through this, that relates to people's comfort level when they learn a little bit more about how we're deploying AI to help them.
Yeah, thank you everybody for sharing that. I am really excited about the unsure and especially the uncomfortable ones there. To be honest, like we're also sometimes AI skeptics here at Metopio. This isn't about like AI is going to change the world, and we are really trying to find meaningful uses for generative AI where it makes sense. So I want to talk about what that looks like. Now, we know, like anybody who has used ChatGPT or used some of this AI knows that it has, it's really cool. It sounds really smart, but it has really strong limitations. So sorry, this is auto playing a little sooner than I wanted it to. So we are trying to use AI in a targeted way where it makes sense. We're focusing on using AI to automate the grunt work that you would maybe hand off to an intern if you had one. That we can use AI to write the first draft of something so you can spend your time editing rather than having to write everything from scratch. So it really wants us to go through this. Why don't I just walk you through the demo and we can come back to the AI part. Go ahead, Angie. So in this demo, we're going to be starting a chip process from scratch in our tool. So we are starting not from a blank slate. We're going to be selecting the CHA that we've previously done in the tool, or you can upload the PDF of what that document looks like. We'll pull information out of that so that you can use that in your process. We can read a chip document, or we can look at what you've previously done. We can pull the information about what your prioritized health needs were, your community, your target populations, like how you did that process and the kind of results that you came to, because of course that informs the chip as the next step in the MAP 2.0 process. Now, Sarah walked you through a number of pieces of the chip. You have to identify those needs again, like describe the needs and understand the target populations, assemble your resources and your partners, figure out like who is going to be helping you to complete this work. And then what we think is probably one of the most challenging parts of the chip is understanding what are we going to do about this? Like, what are some good programs we can run here? So let's watch and see how AI will let us get there a little bit faster. So we can confirm all this information we're pulling out of our CHA process. The first thing AI is going to do is, based on the prioritized health needs that we have from you and information about your community and your system or your health department, we can recommend programs to you, which is based on a validated program library that we've assembled from sources like County Health Rankings and the CDC, NACCHO, and a number of others. So these are evidence-based programs that have full, logic models and activities and outputs and all of that information here. We can present that to you here, but we're also asking AI, hey, can you draft like a logic model for this program? Can you, if it wasn't complete, can you suggest what good activities for this might be? What are some good outputs and outcomes? How might we actually track the metrics that we know that we're having an impact? One of the challenges with using a program library or using one of these sources is that it's not always contextual to your community. Maybe you're a rural system. Maybe you're really interested in partnering with schools, and maybe that's not really in that program bank. What AI can do really well is craft recommendations based on context and based on solid information, and then use those recommendations and sort of like tweak them for your community so that it's giving you more contextual information that is better for what you want to do. I apologize for the chaos happening on the screen here. AI is really good at that first draft, like I was saying, and we've built a model that can take those programs in that library and sort of like, it doesn't have to exist already. We can craft something for you based on your community. So from there, you're presented with a form that has all of the information that we're drafting for you. You can edit that, but you've gotten a lot further already. And when you're done with that process and you want to actually start that program, the chip module that we have has an interactive dashboard where you can track progress over time and share it with your community members, share it with your community partners, make it public if you want. in addition to exporting out a Word document or making a PDF to actually submit for, for regulatory purposes, you also have a living CHIP dashboard where you're able to track your progress over time, enter measurements, allow other people in your community or your partners to enter their measurements and be able to see how many boxes of food did we deliver? How many people showed up for these classes? What was the average BMI or A1C score of the people who were in this program, and see how that's changing over time. Of course, tracking all of this along with Metopio's curated library of data points, where you can have benchmarks to your state, to your country, and know like contextually where you're trying to be based on those goals. So we are not trying to write your chip with AI, right? I don't think AI will ever be able to do this sort of thing from scratch. But when you think about what's in a chip, you've got a lot of information about the needs of your community. You've got the programs, you've got the information about those programs. And often a lot of this is just kind of, you don't always have time to craft that full logic model. And I know because I used to do this. Like if you have 12 programs at every hospital, maybe you have a number of hospitals in your system. Maybe you're a health department, you're working with a number of different partners and every one of them has something that they want to be doing. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of logic models. There's a lot of pieces in the logic model. And you don't always have time to put all that together with like, what's the best way to map this outcome? What's the best way to figure out what we're supposed to do here? AI can give you that rough draft with all those complete steps and let you just edit that, refine it, make sure, ask it to try again, do this a little bit better, that sort of thing, but get you there a lot faster. This looks like instead of taking weeks to develop these parts of the chip process, you can do it in hours with your partners to build an interactive dashboard you can share with your partners, and then go from there and immediately dive into program analysis, program management, figuring out how to go further and improving the health of your community.
So maybe I should have AI running my slides today. It would do, I think it's taken over for me, but we did want to talk to you. We put this in the beginning. Want to take one more poll about logic models, because as Jonathan was talking about, a lot of times it takes a lot of time and effort to have logic models for every single one of your programs. And so sometimes you'll do the priority ones, or sometimes you don't have time to do them at all. So we're just curious if, how comfortable you are with logic models. And the reason is because this will feed into measurement over time and how you can reflect measurement over time. So I'm going to give you just another moment to let us know, logic models, is this something that you're using all the time? Sometimes you'd really like to, you need to learn more. And I'll share those results. So I think this bears out what we know, Jonathan, that we would really like to use these, but sometimes time, resources, or just effort available doesn't get us there, as well as really knowing how to construct a logic model, which is, I think, what we've tried to build into the product.
Yeah, so I can take a second and just a logic model, for those of you who may not be familiar with this, is a number of people consider this sort of best practice for designing a program. It's tied to sort of elucidating your theory of change. So you're going to be investing resources in trying to improve the health outcomes in your community. How are those inputs, the resources you're putting in, whether that's staff time or money or partnerships or all of the above, how does that lead to better outcomes in the long term? Like, what is all that stuff in between? What's the step-by-step, the flow chart of, well, you're putting in this stuff, you're going to do things with those inputs, you're going to spend that money, you're going to use that staff time, you're going to fill that room. That's going to then lead to immediate outputs. How many people showed up? How many boxes of food did you deliver? How many calls did you make, like referrals generated, that sort of thing. Over time, short, medium, and long term, that should, with your theory of change, lead to improved outcomes. Short-term outcomes might be something like people filling out a survey and saying, hey, I understand my diabetes better now. Medium and long-term outcomes might be actual improvements in health outcomes at the individual level of people who did your program, and even at the community level of people around them. So a logic model, you can call this a number of ways, you can design it a number of ways. We're using best practices from the MAP 2.0 process to do this, where you start from the inputs, use those for activities, and then use that to track outputs and outcomes, and do all of that in one interface, one tool, and again, with a rough draft generated, so you don't have to invent all of this from scratch. So you can put logic models in your chip. I really think it's a lot stronger with those. You can also leave them out. A lot of people have been doing programs for a long time and they don't need to go back and redefine that program because they know that it works. But I find that putting that structure around it helps you understand the impact that you're having. And when we talk about impact, it can be really hard to see that because often we're talking about, longer timescales than we really have time for to justify in a budget or something like that. But impact is more than just improving life expectancy. It can also be immediate impacts that we see here that we know are going to translate to longer term impacts down the road. It can mean periodic follow-ups with people in your programs. So there's a lot of ways of doing that.
So one question that popped up that's kind of relevant to that, Jonathan, is can you talk about how Metopio is looking at the prioritized needs and matching them up with the programs?
Yes. So we have a program bank of, I think, something like 400 evidence-based programs. Again, we're pulling these from, they've already been compiled by sources like County Health Rankings and the CDC. So you might say, one of our prioritized needs was alcohol and substance abuse, and particularly maybe underage drinking in our community among teens, for instance. That then is fed into the search algorithm. And by the way, before I jump into the AI part, we're also making that entire library available to you to simply search through on your own. No AI involved, except that AI helps you find stuff more easily, but it's showing you the exact things that came out of that evidence bank. But you might say, I want to program on evidence-based drinking. We'll have the tool do that automatically for you because we know that that was your need from your CHA. So it will look through and it might find 10 to 12 programs on underage drinking in that library, in that bank. Actually, it is 10 to 12 programs. Like I've looked at this. Now, from 10 to 12 programs, and they're all fairly similar, like a lot of them are school-based because we're talking about teenagers. A lot of them involve education and enforcement. How do you take 10 to 12 different programs and figure out which one of these is best? Which one do I implement? They have all sorts of different contexts. They were done by all sorts of different people. This is where AI, and the particular AI that we're using, is good at taking a lot of examples and using that to kind of suggest sort of best practices from each of them combined into a single program. So it might see that a lot of people are looking at enforcement-based measures at, say, bars and nightclubs, and that's tied to the programs that have the highest evidence ratings from those strategy banks. And that then is one of the activities that ends up in the logic model that it recommends for you. It will provide multiple recommendations. So it's not just saying this one size fits all. But what's also really cool about this is you can say, I really want to partner with the police department because they're interested. They've already been looking at this, like they want to help us out. Can you refine this to involve the police more? And then it can come back to you with a revision that, again, think of this as like an eager intern. It's going to take your input. It's going to then generate another draft for you to review. And you can kind of have that back and forth. But you're developing this a lot faster based on evidence-based work. There's still a human in the middle. You're still the one hitting that, publish button. But everything can be done so much faster and using this entire library behind it.
So that leads into our last slide. Again, I apologize. Let's make sure this
I
doesn't
want
auto-play.
So AI,
but,
as I said, we can be skeptics too. Like there's a lot of AI stuff out there that is really just chaff, that is hype and nothing behind it. We are really using, I think we're really using AI in a meaningful way because we're using it specifically to automate parts of the process that can be automated easily by a machine that can think through these things in the way that a computer thinks anything, but you still have a human in the middle and you're still in the driver's seat. So when we talk about data privacy and security, we make sure that the AI partners we work with are not storing any of the data we send and certainly don't use that to train their own models. We're making sure that we're using diverse representative data. So as we continue to refine this strategy bank, we're going to be looking for what are the gaps in here? What are target populations that don't tend to be represented in these validated evidence-based programs? Are there recency gaps? Like, is COVID even in here at all? Or was all of these programs like pre-COVID? Do we need to make sure we make an extra effort to go out there and find something resembling vaccine hesitancy, for instance, more recent phenomena? We have to build in feedback loops. As you use AI on our tool, we're going to be asking you, hey, what did you think? Did this solve your problem? Building that in. being transparent with our users about how we're using AI and what its limitations are. And then as far as accuracy, this is why AI is not writing the final draft of your chip, it's writing the first draft. A lot of this still feeds through a human. You have the context, and only you have the context about your community. We can't ever train a machine to understand that. And so we're using AI to write a draft and recommend things based on a library of programs, not to say this is what we're going to do.
And so, Jonathan, one of the questions is, so what is the output? Is the output an actual document, or what do you get once you've put all your programs and
the
your
output is a
logic
Word
models?
document that represents the vast majority of the content of your chip to submit to a regulatory body. So it will have the programs, the logic models in it. It'll have a description of your community, descriptions of your needs. The output is also an interactive dashboard that can be shared, and that has, again, all of this information, but it's clickable, it's easy to understand, and you can go in there and add your measurements as well.
So we're very interested, kind of given our polls so far and thinking about how AI, given Jonathan's explanation, works for you and what you're doing in your chip process. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat. As Jonathan said, we're automating caption writing and analyzing transcripts and recommending interventions, drafting those logic models, even producing a draft report. But really, you are in control of all of that, and it's all within your power to edit. So it's about getting you to the thinking part faster with some guidance. Like you said, we follow the MAP 2.0 process and really are getting you engaged, giving you more time to get engaged with your community. So one of the questions we had is, how do you recommend what we should do for program success and communicate that? So I guess once you put the logic model together, how do you look at those successes and then communicate them?
Sarah, do you want to try that?
Sure. I think that one of the, kind of key strengths of having, kind of the dashboard in Metopio, I think, is being able to share it with partners. So just kind of that frequent and continuous communication and collaboration. So it's not once every 3 years, okay, we did this, but annually or more frequently. So I think it's the frequency of the communication and the collaboration that's really key to making sure that individuals are aware of the successes and you're able to kind of communicate those accurately. I don't know if either of you have anything to add to that.
No, I think that's right. And I think we have collaborations and partnerships, some public health departments who have put out their plans, and they want to include their partners in the goals. So they've had their partners submit, how are they, if we have a food program and they're doing part of it, we're doing part of it, what does that look like in terms of collaborative impact? Because we know that these are persistent and systemic root causes we're trying to address. So having more people aligned with our programs and priorities, the better off your impact, or the more impact you can have. So I know Elizabeth asked, if you didn't see this in the question and answer, that she wanted to know if there's a reading level standard, because a lot of what we do does come into contact with technical and medical terms. And so, Jonathan, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I did so in the chat. We aim for sort of a 8th grade reading level. So we're not going to be using SAT words, like fancy words like that. You're right that there are going to be medical terms. There's going to be things like A1C level. I think as we start to roll this out, we're going to be looking for a lot of user feedback about the way that this is presented. And again, like, we are reading a lot of chips as we do this, like a lot. And we're looking at the ways that this terminology gets presented. Do you say A1C level, or do you explain what that represents, even though that may be a pretty technical explanation?
Yeah, and I have 2 AI questions as follow-up. So what applications does this use of AI have on visualizations, like maps, charts, logic model display? Like, what is AI generating?
So on the maps and charts, we have an AI caption generation tool that when you publish, especially your community health assessment, you include visualizations in that. You need to describe what the visualization is saying. Some people can't read, or some people can't see. They're going to have to use a screen reader or something. Other people might not know how to read a line chart or a bar chart or clustered, whatever. They need to understand, what are you trying to show me here? How do I read a map? How do I look at the colors in the map? Some people don't have that knowledge that we do. AI will generate the caption for you that explains in plain English what it's showing. That's a really valuable use for AI. We are exploring ways to have AI look for, really like pull out more patterns in that data, and compare that across different visualizations. This is a very hard problem. We're talking about kind of having an AI data scientist, which is a step above where we currently are with AI. And like I said, we're trying to be really intentional, make sure we're doing things that AI is able to do and not giving it tasks that are simply beyond it.
And then one last question I have here, which is, how quickly could I get started with my chip? Do I have to have done my CHA in your product, or how does that work?
No. So you will need to put in prioritized needs for us to recommend programs, but you can always edit these at any time too. You could test them out. You probably have a sense of what those needs might end up being. This tool will immediately be able to start recommending you programs simply if you give us a little bit of information about your institution, your service area, the kinds of people that you treat, and what your need is. So you could put in that information. It doesn't have to be finalized, and you can edit it later and use that to generate and search through our program library. I think that is really the most interesting part of the chip, and that is where we want you to be spending most of your time, and especially brain power. And you can start that well before you're finished with the CHA.
Great. I don't see any other questions, but if you have a last question for us, go ahead and put it in the chat. In the meantime, I just like, since we're talking about community assessments, I have one last poll for you, so don't go so quickly yet. We do these as regular webinars for learning. We want to bring everybody together to learn. So our next webinar will be on senior health and age-friendly community assessments. So how do you look at the subpopulation of seniors in your community and put that equity lens on to see how that impacts the priorities that you have within that population. So go ahead, if you'd like to be registered for that or not sure yet, that's fine. We run these on a regular basis on topics that we know are relevant to the kinds of assessments that you're doing. So I'm excited because the Trust for America's Health, Megan Wolf, will be joining us. She's a leading expert in this space. You'll be amazed by her wealth of knowledge, and they have an age-friendly community assessment that we're going to dive into with data, programs, resources, and other ideas. So there's one last question. Can I forward the invite for the next webinar to colleagues? Absolutely. This is for all of our public health and community health and government, other friends who are really interested in learning more about their community. So if you have, also I'm always open for topics. If you're interested, I'm looking at doing some substance use and also refreshing our food insecurity. Those are some ones that are on the horizon in addition to senior health. Actually, I should say it's not senior health. I've learned today it's older adult, and September is older adult healthy month. It's senior health month, but they call it older adult. That's the appropriate way to, I guess. Our language is always changing around populations. So I'm going to try and integrate that into my supporting healthy aging for older adults. Thank you. And social isolation, Cami mentioned social isolation and loneliness. That's one of the things that we're going to hopefully incorporate into the next webinar. So with that, I do appreciate your patience with all of our polls and my technical difficulties today. I want to thank Jonathan and Sarah and each one of you for taking time out to join us. Again, if you want to join us for our next webinar or you have any other additional questions, feel free to reach out. As a reminder, we will send the recap as well as the recording to everyone who signed up today. So thank you so much for your time today. Have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar.